My name is Elias Rivers, and for the longest time, I believed I held the keys to enlightenment. I wasn't born into power or privilege. My journey started in a small, unremarkable town where I was just another face in the crowd. But even as a child, I had a way with words. I could captivate people, turn their attention to me, and make them believe in the stories I spun. It wasn't long before I realized the power this gift held. Life was ordinary until my late 20s, when a series of personal crises shook me to the core. I lost my job, my partner left, and the sense of purpose I thought I had unraveled. I was desperate for answers, for something, anything, that would make sense of my pain. That's when I stumbled into the world of spiritual self-help. The books I read, the seminars I attended, and the teachings I absorbed all promised one thing: control over my destiny through divine energy. I became obsessed, devouring every piece of New Age material I could find. Manifestation, energy healing, cosmic alignment. I convinced myself these were the tools to reshape my life. But as I studied, I noticed something. While the concepts intrigued me, the people teaching them lacked the charisma to truly inspire. That's when it hit me. What if I could do it better? I began to blend the ideas I had learned with my own interpretations, weaving in elements of Christianity to make them more relatable. I told myself I was simply enhancing the message, but deep down, I knew I was crafting something entirely my own. I called it the Path of Illumination, a journey of self-discovery that promised enlightenment, inner peace, and divine favor. But to walk the path, one needed a guide, and I positioned myself as that guide. I started small, hosting local workshops in rented community centers. My confidence and charisma drew people in, and my teachings resonated with those searching for meaning. The universe is calling you, I would say, pacing the stage with passion. Your purpose is waiting, but only if you align yourself with the higher vibrations I can show you. Soon, my following grew. What began as a handful of attendees turned into packed rooms, then large conference halls. People were drawn to my message, but more than that, they were drawn to me. I became their source of hope, their connection to something greater. I knew what to say, how to say it, and how to keep them coming back for more. But it wasn't just words that kept them hooked. It was the lifestyle I presented. I built an image of success, spirituality, and control. My clothes were always immaculate, my demeanor confident yet approachable. I surrounded myself with a loyal inner circle who reinforced my teachings and spread my influence further. It was all part of the persona I carefully crafted. Behind the scenes, though, cracks were forming. My success was built on half-truths and manipulations, and I knew it. My teachings about divine energy and cosmic balance had no real foundation, but I justified it by telling myself I was giving people hope. Even when doubts crept in, I pushed them aside, convincing myself that the ends justified the means. Financially, I thrived. Donations poured in, books and online courses sold like wildfire, and people paid thousands for exclusive retreats where I promised direct revelations from the universe. My power grew, but so did the weight of maintaining the illusion. I became paranoid, fearing that someone would expose me, that the empire I built would crumble. I silenced those fears with more success, more followers, more adoration. But late at night, when the crowds were gone and the lights dimmed, I couldn't ignore the emptiness. I had built a kingdom, but it was hollow. The people around me worshipped my words, but no amount of their devotion could fill the void inside. I avoided that truth, burying it beneath more work, more appearances, more self-assurance. Then came the turning point, the moment that would change everything. It was a normal evening. I had just finished addressing a room of over 1,000 followers, their applause still echoing in my ears as I stepped backstage. My assistant handed me a bottle of water, rattling off my next commitments, but I barely heard her. A sharp pain shot through my chest, so intense it took my breath away. I stumbled, clutching at the wall for support.
"Mr. Rivers, are you okay?" she asked, panic in her voice.
I tried to speak, but no words came. The pain radiated down my arm, and suddenly, I was on the floor. My vision blurred, the voices around me fading into a distant hum. I heard someone shout to call an ambulance, but it all felt far away, like I was slipping into another world. In those moments, a strange clarity came over me. My life flashed before my eyes, not the glamorous version I presented to the world, but the truth. The lies I told, the people I misled, the emptiness I had ignored. It all crashed down on me at once, suffocating me under its weight. As my vision darkened and my body grew still, one thought echoed in my mind. What if I've been wrong all along? And then, everything went silent. Everything was still. I was no longer in my body, and the chaos of the room where I collapsed had vanished. I floated in a place that felt weightless, silent, and detached from everything I'd known. At first, it wasn't frightening. In fact, it was strangely familiar, like stepping into one of the visions I'd described to my followers so many times. Around me, soft colors began to swirl, golden yellows, calming blues, and vibrant whites. It was beautiful, almost soothing. I felt a moment of pride. So this is it, I thought. This is the enlightenment I have been preaching about. The idea comforted me, and I let myself drift deeper into this realm, convinced I was stepping into the higher state of being I had promised others. But something was off. The colors began to shift, losing their brilliance and becoming muted. The whites turned gray, the yellows dimmed, and the blues darkened to a deep, oppressive hue. The beauty that had initially surrounded me now felt artificial, like a poorly made imitation. I reached out instinctively, but my hands met nothing but emptiness. The light I had basked in flickered, its warmth replaced by a chill that sank into me. A voice echoed softly in the distance. It was low and indistinct, growing louder with every passing second. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sharp, mocking, and filled with a bitterness that made my stomach churn. More voices joined in, overlapping until they became an overwhelming roar. It wasn't just noise, it was accusation. Liar! Deceiver! You led them astray! The words hit me like physical blows. I tried to cover my ears, but the voices seemed to come from within me, exposing every hidden fear, every buried truth I had ignored. My confidence, the armor I had worn for years, began to crack. I looked around, searching for the light that had once filled this place, but it was gone. Instead, shadows began to creep in from the edges of my vision, swirling and twisting like living things. They wrapped around me, heavy and suffocating. The air grew thick, and each breath felt like a struggle. "Where am I?" I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer came. The shadows closed in, and the ground beneath me disappeared. I was falling, not fast, but endlessly, with no sense of direction or control. The darkness grew heavier, pressing against me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. As I fell, images began to flash before me, faces I recognized, followers who had trusted me, believed in me, given their lives and resources to my teachings. I saw their hopeful expressions as they clung to my promises of enlightenment and power. But those expressions began to change. Hope turned to doubt, doubt to disappointment, and disappointment to despair. I saw lives unraveling, families torn apart, people left empty and lost, chasing a false light that I had created. "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "That wasn't my fault. They chose to follow me." The images didn't stop. More faces appeared, each one etched with pain and confusion. The weight of their suffering pressed down on me, and I realized I couldn't escape it. I had convinced myself that I was helping people, but here, in this endless darkness, the truth was undeniable. I hadn't just deceived them, I had deceived myself. The voices returned, louder this time, their accusations cutting deeper. "You stole their hope. You replaced truth with lies. You were never their guide. You were lost, just like them." I tried to fight back, to justify my actions, but the words caught in my throat. The shadows around me seemed to tighten, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I was trapped, weighed down by the lies I had built my life on. Every teaching, every promise, every word I had spoken felt like chains pulling me deeper into the abyss. "Please," I whispered, barely able to speak. "Help me!" At first, there was no response. The darkness grew colder, the silence heavier. Despair wrapped around me, and I felt myself sinking further into the void. My thoughts became frantic. This can't be it. There has to be more. There has to be something, or someone. With every ounce of strength I had left, I cried out, "God, if you're there, help me. I don't know the truth, but I need it. I need you." The moment those words left my lips, everything changed. A piercing light broke through the darkness, brighter and more powerful than anything I had ever seen. It wasn't like the false light I had experienced before. This light was alive, radiating warmth and peace that cut through the cold and fear surrounding me. The shadows recoiled, retreating as the light grew stronger, enveloping me in its embrace. I felt the weight lift from my chest, and for the first time, I could breathe. The voices were silenced, replaced by a profound stillness that filled every part of me. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the light wasn't just light, it was a presence, a being. And then, I saw him. He stepped forward, his form radiant and majestic, yet filled with a gentleness that put me at ease. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, I felt completely exposed, yet fully accepted. He didn't need to say who he was. I knew. Deep in my spirit, I knew. "Jesus," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He nodded, his expression kind but firm. "Elias," he said, his voice steady and filled with authority. "You have sought truth, but you've looked in the wrong places. The light you created was a shadow of the real thing." Tears welled up in my eyes as his words struck deep. "I didn't know," I said, my voice breaking. "I thought I was helping people." "You sought to fill the emptiness inside you," he replied. "But only I can fill what you've been missing. You've led others astray, Elias, but you are not beyond redemption. My grace is greater than your mistakes." The light around him seemed to grow brighter, and with it came a warmth that melted away the fear and guilt I had carried for so long. For the first time, I felt hope. Not the manufactured kind I had sold to others, but real, unshakable hope. "Why would you help me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't deserve it." "Because I love you," he said simply, "and because your story is not over." His words echoed in my soul, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I didn't fully understand what was happening or what lay ahead, but I knew one thing. This was the truth I had been searching for all along. The light surrounding Jesus grew brighter, illuminating every corner of the realm I found myself in. His presence was overwhelming yet comforting, authoritative yet compassionate. I couldn't meet his gaze for long, though. It was too piercing, as if he could see everything I'd ever thought or done. And in his eyes, I saw both truth and love, but also a sorrow that cut me deeply. "Elias," Jesus said, his voice steady, filled with authority, yet carrying a warmth that put me at ease. "It's time for you to see the truth." The space around us began to shift, and suddenly I wasn't standing with Jesus anymore. Instead, I was watching scenes from my own life, playing out in vivid detail as though I was reliving them. The first image showed a small room, a workshop I'd hosted years ago, filled with eager faces looking up at me as I spoke. I remembered that moment clearly. It had been the beginning of my rise, when I first started blending spiritual ideas with my own interpretations. My voice echoed in the vision. "The power to transform your life is within you. All you have to do is unlock it. Follow my guidance, and the universe will align in your favor." The faces in the room lit up with hope, nodding eagerly, hanging on my every word. At the time, I had felt proud, energized by their trust in me. But now, watching from this perspective, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Behind their smiles, some of them carried deep pain. There was a woman in the front row whose eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her face lined with worry. A young man in the back fidgeted nervously, his shoulders slumped. They had come to me seeking answers, desperate for hope, and I had given them what exactly? The scene shifted again, this time to one of my larger events. Hundreds of people were gathered, their voices rising in unison as they repeated my affirmations. "I am powerful. I am enough. I am divine." At the time, the sound had felt exhilarating, proof of my influence. But now, standing with Jesus, I could hear something else beneath the surface: desperation. They weren't declaring these affirmations with confidence. They were clinging to them like lifelines, trying to convince themselves of something they didn't truly believe. Jesus' voice broke through the scene. "They trusted you, Elias. They came to you with open hearts, seeking truth. But what did you give them?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. I wanted to say I'd helped them, given them tools to better their lives, but I couldn't deny what I was seeing. I had offered them words that sounded profound, but were empty. I had built my teachings on half-truths and false promises, claiming to lead them to enlightenment while feeding my own pride and ambition. The scenes continued, each one hitting harder than the last. I saw the ripple effects of my teachings. The woman from the front row, now sitting alone in a darkened room, her hope shattered because the promises I'd made hadn't materialized. The young man from the back, angry and disillusioned, lashing out at those around him because he felt he'd been lied to. Families torn apart as some members clung to my teachings, while others rejected them, unable to reconcile their differences. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating in its intensity. "I didn't mean to hurt them," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I thought I was helping." Jesus turned to me, his gaze both kind and unyielding. "Elias, your intentions cannot undo the harm that was done. You took the trust they gave you and used it to build your own kingdom, not mine." Tears streamed down my face as I fell to my knees, unable to bear the weight of his words. "I'm sorry," I choked out. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." Jesus knelt beside me, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. "You didn't know the fullness of truth, but now you do, and with truth comes a choice." The scene shifted again, this time showing moments I had forgotten, or perhaps chosen to ignore. Acts of kindness I had dismissed as insignificant, words of encouragement I had spoken without realizing their impact. People who had been inspired to seek God because, despite my failings, they caught glimpses of His love through the cracks in my teachings. "Even in your brokenness, I was at work," Jesus said, his voice filled with tenderness. "The good you did was not because of your teachings, but because of my grace working through you. And that same grace is offered to you now." I looked up at him, my heart breaking under the weight of both guilt and hope. "How can you still want me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "After everything I've done, how can you forgive me?" Jesus' expression softened, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Because I love you, Elias, not for what you've done, but for who you are, a child of God, created in my image. My grace is greater than your mistakes, and my love is greater than your failures." He extended his hand, and as I took it, a warmth flooded through me, washing away the shame and despair that had gripped my heart. I felt lighter, freer, and for the first time, I understood what grace truly meant. It wasn't something I could earn or deserve. It was a gift, given freely out of love. "There is still time to make things right," Jesus said, his voice filled with purpose. "Your influence, your words, your story, they can still bring light instead of darkness, but it will require humility, courage, and a willingness to surrender your pride." I nodded, my resolve strengthening. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. "Just tell me what to do." The light around us brightened, and I felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. My life wasn't over, and though I couldn't undo the harm I had caused, I could choose a new path, one that led others to the truth instead of away from it. "Your story is not finished, Elias," Jesus said. "Go and share the truth. Lead them to me." The light around us dimmed slightly, but Jesus' presence remained steady. His expression grew more serious, though the compassion in his eyes never wavered. "Elias," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I have shown you the truth of your life and the grace that is available to you. But now, you must see the consequences of continuing on the path you have walked." My heart tightened as the space around us shifted. The golden glow faded into a dull gray haze, and I found myself back in a familiar setting, one of my large events. The room was filled with people hanging on my every word, their faces reflecting the same trust and hope I'd seen so many times before. But something was different. The atmosphere felt heavier, almost oppressive. I watched as I spoke from the stage, my voice confident and commanding, delivering the same messages I had repeated countless times. The universe is yours to command. Your destiny is in your hands if you follow my teachings. The crowd erupted in applause, but as I looked closer, their faces began to change. The hope in their eyes flickered and dimmed, replaced by confusion and weariness. A woman in the front row seemed on the verge of tears, clutching a photo of what looked like her family. A young man in the back was nodding eagerly, but his hollow eyes betrayed his desperation. "These are the ones who trust you," Jesus said softly, his voice filled with sorrow. "But trust without truth leads only to destruction." As he spoke, the vision shifted. The woman from the front row appeared again, now alone in her home. The photo she had held earlier sat on a table beside her, but the room was dark, and she looked lost in despair. "She gave everything," Jesus said. "Her time, her resources, her hope, all because she believed your promises. But when those promises failed to deliver, her faith in anything greater was shattered." My stomach turned as the scene shifted again. The young man appeared, this time standing in a dimly lit room with others his age. They were angry, their voices raised in frustration. "You told us we were enough," one shouted. "You said we could control our destiny, but my life is worse than ever." The young man slammed his hand against a table, his face contorted with rage. "If this doesn't work, nothing will," he muttered, his voice shaking. "Maybe there is no truth. Maybe everything is a lie." I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Jesus' voice cut through the noise. "Your words had the power to inspire hope, Elias, but without truth, they also had the power to destroy it." The vision darkened further, and I found myself standing in a vast, barren landscape. Shadows loomed everywhere, their forms indistinct but menacing. Whispers filled the air, growing louder until they became a deafening roar. Accusations, doubts, and cries of despair echoed around me, each one sharper than the last. "These are the lives touched by your influence," Jesus said, his tone filled with both sadness and urgency. "Each word you spoke carried weight. Each promise you made rippled out, touching not only those who followed you, but those they encountered. Your teachings didn't just affect individuals. They affected families, communities, even generations." The weight of his words pressed down on me, and I felt my knees give way. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I thought I was helping." "I know," Jesus said gently, "but intention does not erase consequence. The path you chose, rooted in pride and self-reliance, has led to pain and confusion for many." The shadows around me began to swirl, forming a towering figure, an eerie reflection of myself. This version of me stood taller, more imposing, but his face was hollow, his eyes empty. He raised his arms, and the shadows around him grew larger, spreading out like a dark wave. "This is what happens if you return to your old life unchanged," Jesus said. "Your pride will consume you, and the darkness you have sown will grow." The towering figure began to crumble, its hollow shell collapsing into dust. As it disintegrated, the shadows around it began to devour the landscape, leaving nothing but emptiness. "If you choose to ignore the truth," Jesus continued, "the destruction will not stop with you. The ripples of your pride will continue, leading others further into darkness." Tears streamed down my face as I watched the scene unfold. "I don't want this," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't want this for them, or for me." Jesus knelt beside me, his hand resting on my shoulder. "Then choose a different path, Elias," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "The grace I offer is real, but so is the urgency of this moment. You cannot continue as you were and expect a different outcome." I looked into his eyes, the sorrow in them mingling with hope. "But what if I fail?" I asked. "What if I try to change and it's not enough?" "You are not called to be perfect," he said. "You are called to be faithful. My strength will be sufficient for you, even in your weakness. The choice is yours, Elias. But know this: rejecting the truth is not just a rejection of me. It is a rejection of the life and peace I want to give you." The vision began to fade, and the light around us grew brighter once more. The oppressive darkness was gone, replaced by the warmth of his presence. "This is your moment of decision," Jesus said. "Will you cling to pride and deception, or will you surrender to truth and grace?" I swallowed hard, the weight of the decision pressing on my soul. But as I looked into his eyes, I knew there was only one answer I could give. "I choose you," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I choose the truth." A smile broke across his face, and the light around us grew so bright that it filled every corner of my being. "Then go," he said, "and let the truth set you free." The light around us settled into a calm, steady glow as Jesus stood before me. His presence radiated both authority and compassion, and I felt a deep sense of peace, even as I braced myself for what was to come. "Elias," he said, his voice steady but gentle, "the choice you've made to embrace truth is only the beginning. Now, I am entrusting you with a mission to undo the harm your teachings have caused and to lead others to the truth you've discovered." The weight of his words pressed on me, not as a burden, but as a responsibility I could not ignore. "How?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How can I undo what I've done? They believe in me, in the lies I've told. If I tell them the truth, won't it destroy everything?" Jesus looked at me with unwavering love. "Yes," he said, "it will destroy the false kingdom you've built. But from those ruins, I will create something greater, a kingdom built on grace, truth, and salvation. The path will not be easy, Elias. You will face rejection, skepticism, and even anger from those who trusted you. But you must speak the truth in love, and you must trust that I will go before you." The space around us shifted again, and I saw a vision of my followers gathered in one of the large conference halls where I had often spoken. Their faces were a mix of confusion, hurt, and betrayal as I stood before them, publicly renouncing everything I had taught. I saw myself struggling to find the words, my voice breaking as I confessed the lies I had built my teachings on. The vision shifted again, showing smaller, more intimate moments, conversations with individuals, tearful apologies, and attempts to guide them toward the truth. Some responded with understanding, their hearts softened by the sincerity of my words. But others turned away, their expressions hardened with anger and disappointment. "Not everyone will accept what you have to say," Jesus said, drawing my attention back to him. "Some will refuse to believe, clinging to the promises you made because they fear the alternative. Others will condemn you, accusing you of betrayal. But remember this, your mission is not to convince them. Your mission is to speak the truth and trust that I will work in their hearts." I nodded slowly, the reality of the task sinking in. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," I admitted. "I've spent so long building this image of myself. to tear it all down. It feels impossible. You are not alone, Jesus said, his voice filled with assurance. My Spirit will be with you, giving you the strength, wisdom, and courage you need. When you are weak, I will be your strength. When you feel lost, I will guide you. And when you are afraid, remember that my love casts out all fear. As he spoke, the light around us grew brighter, and I felt a warmth flood through me, a reminder of his presence, his grace, and his power. It wasn't a promise of an easy path, but it was a promise that I wouldn't walk it alone. The vision shifted once more, and I saw glimpses of the future. I saw myself standing before a small group of followers, sharing my testimony with tears streaming down my face. I saw their expressions change as they listened, some breaking down in their own tears as the truth pierced their hearts. I saw families reunited, lives transformed, and communities restored, not because of me, but because of the grace and truth of Jesus. You will not see the full harvest of your work in this life, Jesus said, his voice steady. But every seed you plant, every word of truth you speak, will bear fruit in ways you cannot imagine. Trust in me, Elias, and I will use your story to bring others to salvation. The scenes faded, and I was left standing in the light of his presence, feeling both the weight of the mission and the strength to carry it out. I'll do it, I said, my voice firm despite the fear swirling in my heart. I'll go back and tell them the truth. I'll do whatever you ask of me. Jesus smiled, his expression filled with love and approval. Then go, Elias, he said. Go and proclaim the truth with humility, with courage, and with love. And remember, I am with you always, to the very end of the age. The light around me began to intensify, enveloping me completely. I felt myself being drawn back, the realm of his presence fading as the physical world came into focus. But even as the brightness dimmed, his words remained etched in my heart. Go and proclaim the truth. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed, my body weak, but my spirit stronger than ever. Machines beeped softly around me, and a nurse stood nearby, her expression a mix of relief and surprise. You're awake, she said, rushing to call for a doctor. I barely heard her. My mind was racing, not with fear or confusion, but with clarity and purpose. I knew what I had to do. The life I had lived, the lies I had told, the empire I had built on falsehood was gone. I had been given a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. In the days that followed, as I recovered, I began to plan my next steps. I drafted a public statement, confessing the truth about my teachings and the harm they had caused. I reached out to my closest followers, apologizing and sharing my testimony of what I had experienced. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done, but it was also the most freeing. Not everyone accepted what I had to say. Some dismissed my words as a delusion or a desperate attempt to salvage my reputation. Others were angry, accusing me of betrayal. But there were also those who listened, who saw the sincerity in my eyes and heard the truth in my voice. They began to ask questions, to seek the truth for themselves, and slowly, change began to take root. Through it all, I held on to the promise Jesus had given me. I was not alone. His Spirit was with me, guiding me, strengthening me, and giving me the courage to keep going, even when the path felt impossible. My mission wasn't to rebuild my life or my reputation. It was to point others to Him, the one who had saved me from the darkness and shown me the truth. And for that, I would gladly face every challenge, every rejection, and every trial, knowing that His grace was more than enough. When I woke up in the hospital bed, the world around me felt entirely different. It wasn't just the sterile environment or the beeping machines. It was me. I had been changed, completely and undeniably, from the inside out. The weight of guilt and deception that had consumed me for so long was gone, replaced by a sense of peace and clarity I'd never experienced before. For the first time in years, my mind was quiet, not racing with schemes or plans to maintain the empire I had built. Instead, a single thought anchored me. I have to tell the truth. The days after my release were some of the most challenging of my life. I knew what needed to be done, but the thought of tearing down everything I'd worked for was terrifying. I had spent years crafting an image of myself as a guide, a visionary, someone people could trust to lead them to enlightenment. Admitting that it was all built on lies felt like signing my own destruction. But as fear tried to creep in, I clung to the memory of Jesus' words. My strength is sufficient for you. I started with the people closest to me, my inner circle. These were the individuals who had helped me build my following, who had supported me and believed in my teachings. They deserved to hear the truth first. Sitting them down, I spoke plainly, without any theatrics or pretense. I need to tell you something, I began, my voice trembling slightly. I've been wrong. Everything I've taught, everything we've built, it's not the truth. I met Jesus, and He showed me what I've done, the harm I've caused, and what I need to do now. Their reactions were exactly what I had expected: confusion, disbelief, and, in some cases, anger. One of them, a man who had been with me since the very beginning, stood up and shook his head. Elias, this doesn't make any sense. How can you just throw everything away? Do you know what this will cost us? I do, I replied, my voice steady. But the truth is worth it. I can't keep leading people down a path I know is wrong. I won't. Some of them walked away that day, unwilling to accept what I was saying. But a few stayed, their skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity as I shared more about what I had experienced. I didn't try to convince them. I simply told them the truth and left the rest in God's hands. The hardest part came next, publicly renouncing everything I had built. I recorded a video and wrote a statement, confessing to my followers that my teachings had been built on deception. I explained how I had met Jesus and how He had shown me the harm I had caused and the grace He was offering me. I knew the backlash would be intense, but nothing could have prepared me for the flood of criticism, mockery, and betrayal that followed. Social media lit up with angry comments and accusations. Former followers called me a fraud, saying I had betrayed their trust and ruined their lives. Some dismissed my testimony as a desperate attempt to stay relevant, while others accused me of losing my mind. It was overwhelming, and there were moments when I wanted to retreat, to let the waves of anger and rejection wash over me and give up. But in those moments, I remembered Jesus' promise, I am with you always. Amid the chaos, there were also moments of light. Quiet messages trickled in. People who had been skeptical at first, but found themselves moved by my words. Some admitted they had always felt something was missing in my teachings, and were now curious about the truth I had discovered. Others shared their own stories of brokenness and loss, saying my testimony had given them hope. These moments reminded me why I was doing this, and gave me the strength to keep going. I began traveling, meeting with small groups and individuals who were willing to listen. My approach was different now. There were no grand promises or elaborate presentations. I simply shared my story, my testimony of grace and redemption, and pointed people to Jesus, not myself. The crowds were smaller, and the skepticism was often palpable, but the peace I felt was immeasurable. For the first time, I wasn't trying to sell a vision or maintain an image. I was just telling the truth. Not everyone was ready to accept what I had to say. Some former followers confronted me, their faces filled with anger and pain. "You lied to us," one woman said, tears streaming down her face. "You made me believe in something that wasn't real." "I know," I replied, my own voice breaking. "And I'm so sorry. I can't undo the harm I caused, but I hope I can help you find the truth now." "How can I trust you after everything?" she asked. "You don't have to trust me," I said, "but you can trust him. Jesus is the truth, not me." Her expression softened slightly, and though she didn't say anything more, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. Moments like that kept me going, even when the road felt impossibly hard. Over time, the resistance began to lessen, and the impact of my testimony grew. I saw lives change, not because of anything I had done, but because of the truth of God's grace. Families were reconciled, individuals found peace, and communities began to heal. The work was slow and often frustrating, but it was worth every moment. As for me, my relationship with Jesus deepened with each passing day. Prayer became my anchor, and his word became my guide. The pride and emptiness that had once consumed me were replaced by humility and joy. I no longer needed to control or impress others. I was simply a servant, living out the mission he had given me. One quiet evening, I sat by a window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The light painted the sky with hues of gold and orange, a reminder of the light that had pierced through my own darkness. As I reflected on the journey, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had lost everything I once thought mattered, but in return, I had gained something far greater: a relationship with the Creator, a purpose rooted in truth, and a peace that could never be taken away. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. "Thank you, Jesus, for saving me, for guiding me, and for giving me the chance to make things right. My life is yours, now and forever." And in that moment, I felt a peace that surpassed all understanding, knowing that I was finally walking the path I was always meant to follow.